Hey, what's up guys, and welcome to today's video. In this one I'm going to be talking about some of the elements that go into improving your striking speed. Now if you're interested in this topic, head to my channel as well, because in the subsequent weeks to this I'm going to be diving into each one of these topics in a little bit more detail in separate videos. So I'm going to be kind of just covering an overview today and touching on each one, kind of like a bird's eye view, and then I'll be looking at them in much more depth on my channel. And I've listed the points in this video in a sort of order of rough importance because, as I mentioned before, you don't really want to kind of like add a load of special advanced tactics onto poor foundational elements, because then you're just going to be making kind of like a bad technique even more strongly kind of ingrained into your muscle memory. And once things become habits, it's really hard to break them. A powerful athlete isn't somebody that's simply strong, but somebody that can exert that strength with speed. And there's often a bit of a disconnect between people when they think if somebody's really fast that they can't be powerful, because they think the two kind of like you have to choose one or the other, but actually it's completely the opposite of that, and they're connected. So if you're able to learn to move quicker, you're going to improve your power as a result, because then you're able to deliver that mass forward at such a rate that it's going to have a greater impact when it reaches the target. I think where that comes from is when people look at this kind of stuff with like an untrained eye, they kind of think that, you know, if somebody's slim and not packed with muscle, that they mustn't be powerful even if they're very quick. But you know, obviously, like somebody like me for instance, who has a body type like that, I'm not going to be as powerful as somebody much heavier, but it's about power to weight ratio. So for my size I'm powerful, but I'm not going to be as powerful as, like, you know, somebody much heavier than me. But of course that's not what it's about. It's about power to weight ratio, and not trying to just kind of like gain a load of weight thinking it's going to make you more powerful, because it doesn't really work that way. The first point we're going to talk about is relaxation, and without relaxation as a kind of starting point, then everything else you're going to do after isn't going to be as effective as it could be. So you need to be able to relax the muscles completely before and after the strike. The only point of tension is really as you hit, so even before you hit as well, kind of consciously relax your shoulders. Then as you strike, the only point of which your body kind of becomes rigid is as you hit the target, or at the sort of final point of the strike, perhaps like mentally an inch or so before the target. Then you relax again completely and draw it back in. And what this does is, if the muscles are tense when they're striking, then they're going to be fighting against each other. So you might think you're moving more quickly, but in reality you're probably not. And also that sort of relaxation creates like a towel whip effect, where it kind of lets the energy store up until right at the end point, whereas if it's tense, it's going to be dissipated into the muscles throughout the strike rather than exerting itself right at the end point, which is obviously what you want it to do. So super important to stay relaxed throughout, and it also obviously conserves your energy, because if you're tense all the time, it's kind of like driving a car at like to its limit all the time. It's going to run out of fuel more quickly. If you're trying to use all of your energy on every strike that you throw and use like kind of muscle power, and then you're not going to have the longevity of performance, and you're going to really tire quickly. So like I said, the analogy of whipping a towel is always really good for this. You know, like your wrist stays completely relaxed as you do it. You whip that towel out, and the only point of which there's any tension is the kind of cracking point right at the end, and then it's relaxed again completely as it comes back. So the strike is going to leave your guard in position, whether it's a kick or a punch, and the moment of tension is right before or as you hit the target. That's when your body becomes stiff and the energy transfers into that target. Then you relax again and bring it down the same line ideally as it comes back in. And the second point is technique. Now technique's not something generally thought of when talking about improving speed or speed development, but it is really one of the most important areas, because you want to have your technique as economical as possible and as efficient as possible. Because if you're wasting energy and you're having to draw the limbs that you're striking with over a greater distance, then obviously that's going to take up more time. So really developing that technique slowly, and shadowboxing is really good for this, slow shadowboxing, to ensure that you're moving along the correct lines that you would like to before kind of adding that speed on. So your body's not having to do more than it needs to, it's kind of just going along the right lines and then retracting in without wasting that energy. This also bleeds into another point, which is the order of recruitment, meaning the order in which the muscles are recruited when delivering and activating a strike, and throughout as well. If the muscles are not kind of working together, then the strike might come out from the wrong position, or you know, you might be sort of like turning your body too early. Things like movement of the shoulders, you know, the use of the body to get the weight behind the strikes and so on. Really refining that technique, making sure the muscles are all kind of working together, is going to improve massively towards your speed, and it's something that you should do before kind of trying to build on any strength or any other drills to kind of improve the speed that way. Now the third point in this is intention, and what I mean by intention is pretty much kind of like It's not exactly this, but the best way I can describe it with words is like the kind of determination to hit. Although it's not exactly that, there's a little bit more to it than that. So rather than just kind of going through the motions like a lot of people do when they train, it's actually kind of having the intention behind each strike and wanting to move quickly. It's partly like a kind of mindset thing, a little bit like the relaxation that you have to be conscious of when you train, but it is also physical as well. The reason it's so difficult to describe is because the definition of intention, meaning having, say, a determination to act, is only really a prelude to the power that implements the action. It's not actually what does the action itself. That's something that's almost intangible. It's like you can't really explain how, you just do it. And that's what I mean by intention, is having that kind of mind-muscle connection that you want to move in that way. And it's super important and super powerful, even though it kind of seems almost like just a kind of afterthought. It's one of the most important things that you should focus upon when going into training. Number 4 is shadow boxing, and shadow boxing is obviously something that has been utilised by boxers and martial artists for generations. It can be used for many different things, but in terms of developing speed, it's a super useful tool because you're able to hit without restriction or hindrance, and you're able to complete the full strike and draw it back in again as fast as you want. And the way I would use shadow boxing to develop speed is a little bit different to just kind of using it as a warm-up, for instance, where you're focusing upon all elements like footwork and head movement and things. So if you want to concentrate on just speed, then I'd recommend doing just some very simple combinations, kind of like building up in speed as you go, but eventually to where you're doing them as fast as you can while completing the full strikes. So it's common when people are trying to move quickly for them to sort of subconsciously cut the strike short, but that's not going to do you any favours, and you're just going to be kind of cheating yourself and not doing the full technique. And just completing those combinations as fast as you can, really focusing upon good technique and being nice and quick and explosive while remaining relaxed. There's a little bit of a disagreement with people about whether shadow boxing with weights improves speed or is more of a kind of conditioning exercise. And I tend to lean on the kind of conditioning side, because really, like, if you went running with a huge backpack full of weight on it and then took it off, it's going to feel like you would be able to run quicker afterwards. But really it's just that you've taken the backpack off, and that's kind of the same with the shadow boxing with the weights. The way you're actually using those weights, you only use very light weights, and the direction at which you're punching, the weights aren't actually providing any resistance against the punches. They're more kind of like pulling down, obviously. Even the pros, when you see them do this, they do very slow movements and they do kind of like very circular movements. So it's more for kind of working the shoulders, in my opinion, rather than kind of trying to improve speed. And the last one is sport-specific conditioning drills. And the reason this is at the end is because this is something to do once you've kind of got all of the other elements going on as well. Because if you do start to do loads of conditioning drills and stuff where your technique's really bad, then you're not going to do yourself any favours. And we want to obviously be working in a way that's going to develop the right muscle fibres for explosive hand and leg speed. In this case, it's the type 2 or fast twitch fibres. I'm not going to go into this too much in detail because Adam's more than covered that in many other videos, so if you want to do that, I'm sure you'll be able to find something else on this channel that covers that. And I'm going to cover this in much greater detail on my own channel once that episode is uploaded. But I'm just going to show you now a few different things, what I like to do, and I feel have really helped contribute to my speed and explosiveness. I'm a big believer in kind of volume training and consistency over sporadic bursts of intensity. So I would recommend doing these at kind of mid to sort of like just above mid level intensity. So if these are kind of taken away from your actual skill focus, then you've kind of gone a little bit too far, in my opinion. So it's like if they're really aching you and you're not able to, say, go and do your striking better the next day or whatever, then you've gone a bit too far. I think the best way to do this kind of stuff is on the same day as you do that, or in a separate session, but don't do too much. It should only really be about 15% of your total workload, so that the main thing is your skill focus, because the best way to develop is just to do the skill, and this stuff should just be kind of as extra. The only thing that I would really recommend focusing upon separately is some kind of focused core work, because the core is the vital link between the lower and upper body, and obviously plays a huge part in transferring the energy from the ground into your strikes. So definitely focus upon some core work, and these are some ones that I like to do personally. So those were some elements that are going to help to improve your striking speed overall. And you want to basically kind of just get used to moving the body more and getting quicker at moving the body in general, because it's about the whole body. It's like a holistic approach, and if you're much more agile overall, then your strikes are naturally going to be quicker. That can be achieved as well through kind of full body agility work, like, you know, jump rope and use of the things like the agility ladder and things like that, which are tools I really like to use. And there isn't really any magic trick to this other than just training. If you were going to look for one element that was really going to kind of pull all this together, it's having fun while you're doing it, because then it's going to become addictive and you're going to want to do it more naturally without having to force yourself to do it. And obviously that's going to add up to a lot more hours, and you're going to become more consistent and much more refined in your technique and your skills. So that's going to be it for this video, guys. Remember, as I said before, to head to my channel, because I'm going to be looking at each of these elements in much more depth over the coming weeks, and you can obviously interact with me there much more, ask any questions about them and things like that. So thanks very much, guys, and I'll see you next time.